Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think most of you heard me at the well yesterday as I talked about this amendment to this particular bill, and it's a very simple amendment which would prevent these schools of innovation from being able to contract with an entity or be operated with an entity that is for-profit, not for-profit, private, nonprofit. And the reason why that was so important, at least to me and hopefully to many of you, is because we want to make certain that public schools remain as public schools. And while I know and appreciate the fact that we have wonderful collaborations across our state with some nonprofit entities who come into the public school environment and assist, those nonprofits should not be the controlling source for governance for those schools. Because as long as those schools are public schools, funded with public dollars, based upon every taxpayer's ability to submit to the taxes of our state, we have a sincere obligation to make sure that whatever is available in York County is available in Allendale. Whatever is available in Greenville County is available in Dillon County. And the only way that we can protect that now and into the future is to make sure that we are providing as much equity in education funding, programs, etc. Right now, that is not the case. And I only fear, to be honest with you, that if we approve this bill in the current form, the situation that we face in inequities across our state, from a failing system that has not funded equitably classrooms across our counties, would only get worse. So I appreciate my colleagues and what they've tried to do to accommodate what we know is a concern, and that is making.
Ms. Cobb-Hunter, I apologize. I can't hear from right here. Sergeant, it's more difficult now with our mask, with our shields, for us to hear up here, for us to hear out in the audience. Members, I think it's going to be more important to take our conversation to the side. Sergeant, if you'd help us with some order in that regard. Ms. Brawley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Ms. Cobb-Hunter. I know some of you may not see this as a big issue because public education has not played a major role in your life, but I stand here because of public education. And we have a responsibility to make sure that that education is available to every single child. And I just really fear that if we don't do this right, we will never be able to correct it. And I know that there are good-intentioned people in this room. I know that. But I can tell you that once we open the door to private entities to run our public schools, to operate our public schools, to set aside the properly and duly elected members of school boards across our state, we will lose what little control we have. And I think we are the ones people have elected to do this work. It is not easy work. Lord knows it is not easy work. And sometimes you do it in spite of the political games that people play. But I am not standing here for me. I'm standing for my grandchildren, for your grandchildren, asking you to not do this thing that I know, and many of you know, is going to kill our public school system. And I don't know about you, but they've been trying to kill public schools in my community for a very long time. And I think sometimes, unintended, we do things to collaborate in that effort. This particular amendment is a simple amendment. It just says we are not going to allow for-profit, nonprofit, and private types of entities to operate a public school. And if you agree with that, you'll vote for this amendment. If you don't, I know you'll vote to table it. But when you do, please don't go home and tell your constituents you support public education, because that will be less than the truth. Please don't go home and tell them that you voted to extend more opportunities to poor little kids that look like me, because that, too, would be less than the truth. Just go home and tell them you did the easy thing. You did the easy thing, and you handed over what little power we still have to make our schools better to some private companies, many of them standing in line from out of state, just waiting. Nonprofits, many of them standing in line from out of state, just waiting for us to cede our authority and the benefit of the next education's generation to someone else. Mr. Speaker, I'm apologizing to my colleagues for being a little emotional.
No problem, Ms. Brawley. Are you in a position to take some questions?
Not yet.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I want to use my 10 minutes talking, because enough of you have talked to me this morning. We've got people in this room who are former school board members like I am. I've had to deal with laws that we've passed in this chamber, and you all have no idea how they've affected these children. But we've had to try to make ends meet as best we could at the school district level. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Because we know our job as a school board member is to try to help kids no matter what environment they came from, no matter what we did up here, no matter how much money mama and daddy had, no matter how many jobs they were working, to try to make sure that their kids had an opportunity. So yes, I get a little emotional about it, because I know how important this is. And I know if we don't fix it, who will? You think the nonprofit companies from out of state are gonna come in here and say, oh, this is great. Listen, education is the last bastion of hope for a lot of these companies to make a ton of money. They've already privatized a lot of our prisons across the country. Why not education? That's the next big money drop. Please don't let this happen. Not without us trying to get this right. I love the idea of schools of innovation. The concept is a great concept. Believe me, if you took every public school classroom and you gave it 2 teachers and an aide, and you told it they could do away with all of the standardized testing, don't you think that we'd see a change? That's innovation. But that's not what we're doing here. We're allowing that to happen for a handful of schools in a handful of circumstances. And that just creates a separate but equal system yet again. I won't be a part of it. As much as I appreciate the compromise that I think was brought to me this morning, and some of you I understand are comfortable with it, I am not quite comfortable with it. And this might be a fight that I lose, but I'd rather lose standing up than kneeling. I'm tired of kneeling. Not for education. And I hope that you aren't either, because none of you would be here if somebody didn't teach you something. Somebody taught you something, and I guarantee you, you didn't teach yourself. So I am pleading with you to do what's right. Let's close this gap. If we like schools of innovation, let's make it something that we can do in every school district. And let's make it something that we can provide in a public sense and not with private dollars or private management or management from outside of our state. Mr. Speaker, that concludes my remarks. I will take no questions. And I ask that you support the amendment and vote in the affirmative. I'd ask for a roll call. I know it's being tabled. I'll ask for a roll call.
Mr. Bamberg is recognized to speak on the amendment.